In over 30 years of counseling kids and families and knowing that we're in the midst of an anxiety epidemic among both, two of the things that I would say concern me the most are, one, a lack of hope that I believe is really pervasive among kids of all ages, and two, the fact that it feels like there's this chasm that has developed between kids' emotional lives and their spiritual lives. And I want to talk about why that is, because I believe for any of us, when our emotions are tossing us about, I want there to be this foundation of faith that catches us when we fall, and certainly catches the kids we love. And so I want to talk about John 16:33, the verse that we know of, "In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I've overcome the world." Those words that Jesus said are particularly important when it comes to talking about anxiety. And part of the reason that I believe this chasm developed is I think kids today don't think there should be any trouble. If you think about the social media world that they're looking at, the highlight reel that we all know that it is, I think they really believe our life should look like it. And to be honest, I think pre-pandemic, we were a part of the problem as grown-ups and as believers. If you can remember before the pandemic, how often we saw people with the t-shirts that said best day ever or the hashtag living my best life. I don't think I've seen either of those things since the pandemic came upon us, but that's part of what we were all selling in that day and time. Now, if I'm going to be honest, you guys, I'm living my best life for 5 minutes a day because I don't believe we are really, any of us, living our best lives this side of heaven. That's not what life in a fallen world is about. But often we're putting this out to kids like it should be what they're experiencing. And so when kids are depressed, when they're anxious, any of those emotions that feel really big for them, they think, how is my faith relevant? Because I should be living this full, amazing, great life that the grown-ups that I love are trying to sell me. You all, instead, I think we've got to go back to the idea of, in this world, we want to expect worry. We want to expect suffering at times. We want to expect trouble. And in fact, if we go back to our research, one of the best ways to handle anxiety is to be prepared for it, to know it's coming, because then we're ready to use the tools. But when we don't know it's coming, it sideswipes us. And so for the kids we love, you all, I think we've got to tell the truth. I think we've got to talk about the fact that everybody feels left out sometimes in school. 7th grade is hard for everyone. I sit with kids going to college often and I say, every college freshman is lonely. Y'all, in the Brave book that I mentioned I wrote for adolescent girls, I took 2 pages to say, you will never find a perfect friend. You will never have a perfect spouse. I mean, I tried to outline the expectations that I think are so pervasive in their culture right now that really trip them up. We want to help them understand what life looks like in a fallen world. In fact, I have a family that started employing this idea and saying it was just a John 16:33 kind of day, which I love that idea to say we're just going to hit trouble and it's normal. We're all going to be anxious at times. We're all going to be worried. We're all going to be sad. And that is not where the verse ends. From there, we get to take heart. We get to take courage. We get to land in a place that's different because, and I love the rest of that verse, because he has overcome. It's not that we have to rise up to something, but it is because we serve a God who has overcome every bit of darkness, every anxiety, every worry, every sadness, all the things that we're going to encounter in our lives. And that kind of faith is foundational to anxiety, to all of the things that we're talking about. And y'all, obviously, as a therapist, I know there are times that therapy is needed. in the lives of kids. That is an important conversation, an important thing for us to know we can have in our toolbox to pull out. If you feel like you've tried the very things in this video and it's not moving the needle enough, that's when I think it's time to go to therapy. I also certainly know there are times that medication's needed. And what I'm talking about in terms of this kind of hope, in terms of anchoring ourselves to these truths, is a sense of trust that I think changes us. I will never forget years ago, I was with a group of 7th and 8th graders at Hopetown, our little summer retreat program for the kids at Daystar. And Melissa Trevathan, our founding executive director, looked at those kids and said, "Courage isn't the antidote to anxiety, but trust is." And I love that idea because courage feels dependent on me. It does feel like something I have to rise to or drum up inside of myself, whereas trust feels dependent on someone a whole lot stronger and braver than I am. And I want to give you a picture of what I think that transforming trust in God, how it changes our anxiety. And years ago, I had the great privilege of being a part of an event through Justice and Mercy International, which is an organization I love and have some dear friends that are involved in. And they have something twice a year called a Jungle Pastors Conference, and it's in the Amazon region of Brazil, literally on the Amazon River. And they have pastors come in from all over that region by boat. Some travel for a week on flat-bottom boat to get to this conference that's training and equipping the pastors. And you all can imagine, maybe we can't imagine till we go there, what life is like in that region. They don't even have school buses there. They have school boats. Everything takes place on the water. And that means the entire region floods regularly. We would hear stories from pastors who were talking about things like having to come into the building on a Sunday morning with their machetes before the church service to kill all the snakes that had come in the most recent flood. I don't think our pastors are doing that in our church buildings, but it was fascinating to sit with these people who would, you can imagine, tell stories of severe depression in their communities. They would talk about addiction. They would talk about abuse. And out of the dozens of people that I met with over that course of the week, I did not hear one person talk about anxiety. Not one. And I really believe that is because they have to live with a bottom line dependence on God and trust in Him that we don't access in our parts of the world. We just don't. We don't step into that. And I believe that kind of trust of knowing my everyday existence is dependent on God and His love and grace and mercy for me. I think that changes us. It certainly changes my daily level of anxiety when I can live in that kind of place. And I want to finish our time by reading something for you that I feel like brings all of these ideas together in a really beautiful way. This is from an essay by Pierre Teilhard de Chardin that I loved, and I've added a little bit to be particularly applicable to what we're talking about. It starts with, above all, trust in the slow work of God. We are quite naturally impatient in everything to reach the end without delay. We should like to skip the intermediate stages. We are impatient of being on the way to something unknown, something new. And yet it is the law of all progress that it is made by passing through some stages of instability, and that it may take a very long time. And so I think it is with your children. They mature gradually. Let them grow. Let them shape themselves without undue haste or pressure or rescuing. Don't try to force them on as though they could be today what time, that is to say, grace and circumstances acting on your own goodwill, will make of them tomorrow. God is at work in this very moment in the life of your child. Only God could say what this new spirit gradually forming within him or her will be. Give our Lord the benefit of believing that His hand is leading your child, and accept the anxiety of feeling yourself in suspense and incomplete. You and your children will learn what trust looks like as you wait, with hope in His overcoming love.